Hello guys, and welcome back to Africa Revealed. Today we continue with our previous discussion on the Second Congo conflict, also known as the Great War of Africa. If you have not watched the first part of this discussion, please watch it on this channel. Do not forget to like the video and leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel and click on the notification button so you don't miss out on new content. In our last discussion of the Great War of Africa, we went into detail about the First War and how it transitioned into the Second War. In this video, I will explain in detail what happened after the rebels abandoned the Kitona Air Base and fled back to Rwanda. The Rwandan president admitted to supporting the rebel groups in order to secure his country. This was after Nelson Mandela, the South African president, requested for peace talks to commence among all countries involved. In January 1999, a ceasefire agreement was made between Rwanda, Angola, Zimbabwe, Uganda and Namibia during a summit held at Windhoek, the capital of Namibia. However, the Rally for Congolese Democracy, RCD, was not invited, and therefore they continued fighting. During the same year, on April 5th, the RCD leader, Ernest Wamba, moved his base from Goma to Kisangani, which was a Ugandan-controlled area, to lead a rebellious RCD group that was then called RCD-Kisangani. This group was later identified as Forces of Renewal. This led to increased levels of tension in the group regarding the supremacy of Banyamulenge. In addition to the agreement made in Windhoek, another agreement was made between Uganda's president and Kabila on April 18th in Sirte, Libya, which was mediated by Gaddafi. However, RCD and Rwanda refused to be part of the peace talks. On May 16th, in favor of Emile Lunga, the RCD leader was overthrown from his position of power. A week later, the different factions of RCD disagreed over who would control Kisangani. They later met in June to plan a strategic attack against Kabila. Despite the diplomatic efforts taken to stop the ongoing war, the Ituri conflict that resulted from the creation of the Ituri province in Uganda began. This situation can best be described as a war within a war. However, diplomatic efforts bore fruit because in July 1999, the Lusaka ceasefire agreement was signed by the conflicting countries, that is, Uganda, Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Namibia, Rwanda and Zimbabwe. The Movement for the Liberation of Congo, MLC, followed suit and signed the agreement on August 1st. RCD was reluctant, but they later signed the agreement on August 31st. The terms of the agreement provided that a joint military commission be formed with forces from all participating groups and nations. The function of the commission was to track, demilitarize and document all armed organizations that resided in Congo. Emphasis was to be put on the groups that were involved in the 1994 genocide attacks. In addition, the United Nations Security Council sent liaison agents to aid in the ceasefire agreement. However, the groups involved in the agreement did not provide enough amenities towards this task, and instead started accusing each other of going against the ceasefire. This was a sign that a war could be reignited at the smallest provocation from any of the participants. In August, Uganda People's Defense Force and the Rwandan Patriotic Army engaged at Kisangani and disagreed on the goals and tactics used during the war. This resulted in great tensions, and after a few days, fighting commenced between the two groups. A ceasefire was called and the conflict lasted only 3 days, but due to the weapons used, many casualties were recorded. Later on in November, Kabila's government broadcasted claims that the army had been rebuilt for the purpose of liberating the country. In reaction to this television broadcast, Rwandan rebel groups planned a massive counterattack at Kinshasa, but were eventually fought off. On February 24, 2000, a total of 5,537 troops, the United Nations Organization mission in the DRC, had been authorized by the United Nations to overlook the progress of the ceasefire agreement. However, fighting was still reported between government forces and rebels, and Rwandan and Ugandan forces. The most intense fights happened at Kisangani between May and June 2000, among Ugandan and Rwandan forces. On January 16, 2001, Kabila was shot and severely injured at the presidential palace located in Kinshasa. He was flown to Zimbabwe, where attempts to save his life failed, and he died 2 days later while in intensive care. To date, the events leading to his assassination are unclear, but there are strong convictions that a young soldier, one of Kabila's bodyguard, shot him. Not long after the assassination, an explosive expose article was published by the French newspaper, Le Monde, revealing documents with details of the plan to kill Kabila. Most of the plotters were the young soldiers who had been under Kabila's command since his rule in 1996 and were angry at the poor treatment accorded to them. The day before Kabila's assassination, it was reported that he had overseen the execution of more than 40 of the young soldiers who had been accused of plotting against him and his government. There were speculations that the young soldiers were being controlled by an enemy of Kabila's government. For example, there was a Lebanese citizen who was alleged to have orchestrated the assassination. In addition, Angolans or Americans were suspected to have been behind the attack. Nonetheless, no proof was provided to cement these claims. Following the assassination of Laurent Kabila, a unanimous vote was cast in the Congolese parliament, and Joseph Kabila, his son, was sworn in as the new president. He was supported by Mugabe, and most of the elders his father had picked during his rule. President Joseph was praised to be a better leader than his father, and there was hope that things would change towards a more peaceful coexistence. It was believed that his father had been the greatest obstacle towards implementing the Lusaka ceasefire agreement of 1999, because he insisted on planning offensive attacks and rejecting deployment of UN peacekeepers in his territories. In February 2001, President Joseph met with President Kagame of Rwanda in the US, where they agreed on a plan to disengage from the UN. In effect, Rwanda and Uganda removed their troops from the battlefields. Later that year, investigations were made and revealed that Rwanda, Zimbabwe and Uganda had been exploiting Congolese resources, diamonds, gold, coltan and cobalt, and a recommendation was made that sanctions be put in place to avoid the illegal act. Rwanda's position in the war began to weaken in 2002 when most members of the RCD decided to join the Congolese government forces. Further, the Banyamulenge members rebelled, which caused violent engagements between them and Rwandan forces. During this time, President Kabila had effected the resumption of the national aid. Inflation in Western Congo was under control and increased the sense of security in the country. However, in March, the RCD Goma division captured Malero, a town under government forces, and this was seen as a violation of the Lusaka ceasefire agreement. Following this attack, peace talks were held in South Africa from April up until December 2002. On April 19, 2002, a formal framework of the Sun City Agreement that provided Congo with a multi-party government and democratic elections was put in place. The downside was that the agreement did not address the unification of the army, and this mitigated the effect of the agreement. Several breaches were reported, but the agreement brought about a reduction in the combat. Later that year, talks were orchestrated between Rwanda and DRC, and the Pretoria Accord peace deal was signed on July 30, 2002. The deal focused on some issues including the removal of Rwandan soldiers who were in Congo, roundup of the Rwandan soldiers, and the disassembly of the Interahamwe militia group, which took part in Rwanda's 1994 genocide. This last condition was imminent, because Rwanda had refused to withdraw until the requirement was met. By 5 October, over 20,000 Rwandan soldiers were reported to have withdrawn from Congo in effect of the agreement. On the 6th of September, the Luanda Agreement was signed between Congo and Uganda. The aim of the deal was for Uganda to withdraw its troops from Congo and to strengthen the relations between the two nations. On December 17, 2002, the Global and All-Inclusive Agreement was signed by all the Congolese parties of the Inter-Congolese Dialogue. The parties involved include the Mai, the national government, civil society representatives, RCD, RCDML, MCL, and the government opposition. The goal of the agreement was to provide a game plan for the transitional government that would have effect in the election that was planned for 2005. This agreement marked the formal conclusion of the Second Congo War. The transitional government came into effect on July 18, 2003. As specified by the agreement, There were difficulties caused by the continued instability in the country, which led to a delay of the elections from June 2005, as had been specified, to July 2006. The transitional government's weakness resulted from the warring parties' refusal to forfeit power to a centralized national rule and high levels of greed and corruption by top officials. However, it was reported that this refusal faded as time passes. On July 30, 2006, DRC held its first national democracy elections after the citizens approved a new constitution. The new government marked a new beginning for DRC, and while there has been reports of minor conflicts in the present day, the most gruesome war ended in 2003. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel.